and we've now reached EGA's 23rd iteration of the Garden States Microdose Webcast, hiding behind some trees there. Oh, hi. Before we get into today's content, I want to tell you about our next upcoming webcast, Cubensis Rising, history, diversity, ID, info, safety, and research update. And that, of course, if you have been following along on the YouTube channel, if not, hit subscribe. With Dr. Alistair McTaggart from Queensland. He will be joined by Kane Barlow, our resident mycologist, and Simon Beck. They'll be unpacking the tale of enchantment around the world's most popular magic mushroom, Psilocybe cubensis. And make sure to subscribe to the newsletter for information on that. This started blooming and everyone loves it. I've got the lorikeets around. Not seeing many bees yet, but this was absolutely covered in bees yesterday. And I've seen plants like it. I can't remember the name, gumnut, but nothing in this colour before. The previous tenants here were gardeners, so we've got a few surprises around our garden. I took one of these flowers into the office yesterday because it was so beautiful. I wanted to show some people. Hey, you're not meant to be out. Make sure when you do head to the EGA website that you check out some of the many resources that are being developed. There's more being added all the time, and they're really fantastic resources, both visually and information as well. You can download them, print them out nice, or save the paper, keep them on your devices. Let's say hello to the pigeons. Good morning, Wally. Maybe you're a bit of an observant one and you've worked out already that we're actually not live for today's webcast. Regardless of that fact, you can still drop your questions or comments into the comment section here on the YouTube video. So if you see something in the comment section that you might know a little something about, or maybe you know where to point somebody in the right direction, do it. And vice versa, if you have something that you want to know, put it out there. We'd love to see the conversations continuing, and we're hoping that this year we can improve that in a very visceral, physical way. Stop running so fast. Oh, for fuck's sake. I was told if I get out before everyone else, and now the cat's here and birds here, birds are up there, and I'm seeing bees around too, that if you get a bit of water in a container, oh my God, and just dip these in, then you should get a little bit of a sweet nectar water. So this was told to me by a new colleague, new friend, I should say. We had a good chat yesterday, and she told me that she used to do she used to live up in Queensland and teach bush tucker, and this was one of those. So let's try. There's birds everywhere. I mean, it tastes like water. Oh. There's a slight. I want to say sweet but peppery. So this fluffy little menace is the reason why everybody's so excited. Nobody's happy that she's out. This is Sylvie. Sylvie, everyone. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe. We've got a lot of content, as I said, been making it since lockdown, and it also includes content from EGA's live in-person events. EGA is a not-for-profit charitable organisation that's been running psychedelic and entheogenic and plant-based events We've got a lot coming up later this year, and the best way to stay in touch with EGA is to subscribe to the newsletter. Just head to the website and subscribe to the newsletter, and you'll be up to date with everything that EGA has to offer. Carpi EGA article, just telling you the information I've been told to tell you. Speaking Beyond Ayahuasca by Jonathan Weisberger. We've released a fascinating article on Carpi, overviewing some of the traditional uses of the different Banistoriopsis Carpi varieties. There's also 2 new EGA videos that have been recently put up on the YouTube channel. David Nichols, Whose Stories Are We Telling? Ethnobotanical Understandings in the Corporadelic Era. And then the second video is David Luke, DMT, Indigenous Gateway to the Soul, and Endogenous Reality Thermostat. Let's get down to business. Patrick Noll is our guest today, and Patrick Noll, and this interview was conducted by EGA team member Dr. Liam Engel. Patrick Noll is a cactus breeder, taxonomist and author specialising in the Trichocereus genus. While the San Pedro group is core to Patrick's work, his breeding program is primarily concerned with beautiful and unique flowering hybrids. Patrick is a long-time moderator of the Shaman Australis Botanical Forum, creator of Trichocereus.net and the books The San Pedro Group, San Pedro Hybrids and Trichocereus Culture. Patrick occupies the niche of cactus social media influencer. He can be found all over the internet under his pseudonym Cactus Jerk. Find Patrick by his website Trichocereus.net, and I'm sure somebody will drop it into the comment section or in the little info thing.
Hi guys, I'm Patrick Noll from Trichocereus.net. I'm the author of like a few books on the genus, and I'm currently working on stuff on other genera like Sörensia, and I'm pretty like active on social media, and it's great to be around. Like, thanks for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Hey Patrick, good to
Hey.
see you.
How have you been?
I've been good. Excited to talk to you. It feels like a bit of a novelty. You know, I see stuff from you online, but you know, you live so far away, and I think, you know, you're a busy man. You've got a lot of stuff going on, so it's exciting to have the time to talk to you.
Always happy to talk. I mean, I'm not a big like interview guy, but yeah, this is works better than I anticipated. Like, I haven't been like using Zoom and stuff like this, but it works surprisingly well.
Yeah, one of the weird benefits of COVID, right? It kind of forced us all to jump over that technology hurdle.
Exactly.
So, speaking of busyness, what's occupying your attention in the garden at the moment? It's cooling down there, right? So you're preparing for the winter, I imagine?
Everything's already set up. I have the heaters and the digital thermostats in the greenhouses. And right now I'm mostly waiting for the cold. It's been raining nonstop, so you constantly check for fungal infections and stuff. But right now I'm sowing out and preparing our actual house for the winter. Like, we are about to get like the heating oil for the winter, stuff like this, you know. Cactus collection is on hold right now until next, like, I don't know, March.
So is the goal
if everything goes well, I don't need to interfere.
Okay,
you know?
so the goal is just to like keep the temperature from dropping below a certain point.
Exactly.
And to make sure there's no infection.
I want to keep them hibernating, and just normally, like, unless you get some like fungal infections during that time, not much is happening. They're just like barely living, you know.
And how do you like to treat fungal infection?
Like, in the greenhouse, it's impossible. Probably if you have a fungal infection in the greenhouse, you need to take the whole plant into the house, into like a room where you can control the humidity. I put them under like UV lamps, like a big grow lamp that I have for stuff like this. And once you have something like this in a greenhouse, you probably need to remove it. You need to cut it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you cut it in the greenhouse, it will come back and come back and come back the whole winter. So
And
It's
what's the temperature that you don't want it to drop below?
like freezing, like
Yeah.
one
Okay.
degree Celsius, 0 degrees Celsius. That's like you can go lower, you can go like -4, but there are certain like genera that I have, like Lobivia, that don't like it when it's that cold. Like you can lose plants then.
And Trichocereus tend to be more tolerant of the cold.
Most species take well down to -4. Once
Yep.
you're going -4, it always depends on how much you hardied up your plants. Then you have Tersheki, like the big tree-like species. They are most cold hardy. They can take down to -10 Celsius. So yeah, but -4 is a good value that you better not go below if you like don't want to risk it. I mean, in most cases they will take it if they're used to it, but sometimes you just lose a plant here and there, and it can be a really good one.
Kind of the name of the game.
Yeah.
And and so on that idea of temperatures, what temperature do they normally go into hibernation?
Like normally they recommend having them at 10 degrees Celsius. That's like not hibernation, but it's enough to just keep them from like growing thin, from having like distorted tips. Hibernation, I think 1 degree, 0 degree, the temperature that I have is pretty good. Like
Mhm.
because not much is happening. The warmer it gets, the more like actual growth you have. And when you don't have the light to come together with it, then it can produce like ugly growth. You need to cut them, and I want to avoid that.
Exfoliation is just I don't know, but it makes my skin crawl, right?
It's just a problem inside mostly. In a greenhouse, you don't have that, like because the natural temperatures just avoid it. You know that the plants just adapt. But growing inside a greenhouse, inside a normal house, I don't think you can avoid it. Like you would need a super strong lamp because most people have like the room temperature is already too high when you can't provide a super strong light source. I'm not a fan of growing inside. I did it in the past, and my plants looked like crap. They looked terrible when I got started. Like the usual way you go when you get into the hobby and you try to do it inside, it's just not a good way. It's just not long term like a solution. You can do it for a year or two if you have to, but it's nothing that I recommend.
I think in Australia, depending on where you are, often the cactus never go into hibernation because the temperature doesn't get so low.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I've heard that. Yeah,
do you think that there is a disadvantage to this or an advantage to going into hibernation?
I've discussed this like with friends from Australia, and I think the flowering is affected. Like it
Less
definitely
flowering.
less flowering, but
Mm.
you can still like I've seen lots of big plants that flower even in these parts of the country, but like I think the plants need to be a little bit bigger until you have a similar amount of flowering. It's just like probably the size at where they flower is a little bit sooner if you can give them a cold winter experience. Like it's just part of their natural cycle, and the more you like the less winter they experience, the less strong is their urge to flower. Like the cold winter over here is a reminder to like to not die.
Yeah,
To
reproduce because you might
right,
die.
that's
Yeah.
the word, right? Yeah, and it definitely helps. I haven't been getting a lot of flowers before I gave them a winter experience. It was one of the like the best things I did was buying a greenhouse simply because cold winter is over here where I live in Europe is really necessary to like for flowering. I didn't know that in the beginning.
Yeah, I put a bunch of cuttings like last year before this growing season. So they've been in, I cut them maybe 12 months ago. And I all from plants that had never flowered, and I put them all in terracotta pots with pretty shitty soil and just neglected them. And the majority of them flowered. Plants that I've had for 7 years or more and have never flowered. And as soon as I start treating them very poorly, they show me the goods.
It's just the stress. Like tip cuttings often flower, in my experience, and then had problems like growing the actual fruit. But the flowering itself, you can trigger that if you remove the tip from larger plants. I've had the same here, like never flowering, and the moment I take off the tip, they start flowering. It's just it's the reminder that they need to do something.
And like, your flower collection is super diverse, and probably with more of a focus on flowers than a lot of the Trichocereus growers I know. And
Recently,
yeah,
in the last like 5 years or so,
that's become your focus. Is that what you mean?
I'm moving like towards like I had to tone down like the botanical species that I have, simply because I don't have the space. So I keep like, I don't know, my plan is to keep maybe 20 large flowering sized plants, and and fill up the rest with flower hybrids. It's just like the way this whole like industry is going over here. I just don't see a future in like column in botanical species. Like if you look at eBay and the way eBay is dealing with this right now, like last month I've seen so many people complaining about having like their products pulled off eBay for completely harmless stuff. And it's just a decision that I also made. Like apart from the breeding, from being a breeder, it's also like being able to afford the hobby, like in the future, like it would already be enough to get your accounts like blocked, and then you're done. It's a very sad situation right now, and me focusing on flowers had a lot to do with that too.
And this is particularly the Trichocereus genera, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
They moved on to Echinopsis too, but mostly.
Yeah.
I mean, they just work with word filters, with like just the usual algorithm stuff that eBay does. They just look for words to delete, and it's unfortunately it's one of the words that they have on their list. And once you like post something like this, you're never really safe. I mean, I haven't been on eBay, and for good reasons.
And it's just because of that word, then they can like, it's like a shadow ban type equivalent, right?
Exactly. It's completely like harmless species even. Like this is such a big and diverse genus, and they still like treat it like it's just one thing, It's a sad situation, but this is the situation because social media and these American companies, like all these American companies, have very strict rules. Like they made up the rules like 20 years ago, and they just like they fulfill them like without any like common sense or reason. This is just, we had the same experience with our cactus books, and it's only because certain words trigger their algorithm. It's a sad situation. I hope it gets better.
Have you had any like, when it's for people that haven't had this experience, when you have triggered this algorithm in the past, what happens? What's the deal?
Yeah, like, I mean, since I'm so often on Facebook, I see a lot of sellers that just post that their products on eBay have been deleted, or that their posts have been blocked, like this kind of stuff. And what happens? Sometimes they are just warned. Sometimes eBay completely blocks their account. You never know. You cannot like the problem with this is you cannot expect something like a legal recourse or something like, if there are no rules that you can follow where you can where you can be safe, like where you know for a fact that nothing will happen. That's not a thing. The slightest, like someone reporting like your product on eBay can already be a problem, and it's just out of your control sometimes. And I don't want to be in a situation like that, and that's why I focused on flower hybrids like long ago. I mean, last 5 years it has gotten more and more, and I'm moving like more to other genera like Lobivia, but this has been a thing for like 10 years minimum, and it's gotten worse and worse lately. Maybe it gets better. Like right now we're having a lot of movement like in the United States and other countries. You never know what happens. I would not have predicted the situation in the United States with their legalization of cannabis. So maybe things will follow, but there's no guarantees.
So maybe complex legal situations aside, what type of flowers, like, do you like breeding? Like, what do you look at that makes you go, wow? What
Well,
traits in particular?
I'm currently like working, like putting together different groups of hybrids. So I'm trying to get very large flowers, which are like over 20 centimeters in diameter. Like the
Cool.
bigger the better. And I am working on like colorful hybrids, like pink stripes. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's incredibly colorful, like with like yellow with red stripes, with pink stripes in center of the petals, like very colorful hybrids. And then I do like intergeneric hybrids, like where more I'm moving towards like getting a body that I like. And I at some point I will try to combine all three and hopefully get something that's really great. Like right now, all these flower hybrids have the same type of body, which is based on Trichocereus candicans. Like it's a boring body in my opinion because they are everywhere. Like most of the hybrids look the same right now, and that's something that I'm working on, like trying to get like a different type. I like columnar cacti, but with colorful flowers. And I at some point I try to to combine everything that I'm doing, like very big flowers, very colorful, and the body should be good too. So currently
So
working in three directions at the same time.
can you tell me, can you describe the type of different body that you're interested in?
Yeah, I'm working a lot with Tersheki,
Hmm.
Pasacana. I want something like that's relatively slender, not completely covered in spines. You know, that almost any other species than Candicans has a great body like that isn't as commonly used. Candicans hybrids are great, but right now they are everywhere, and every different type of body is a bit of fresh air. Like I'm not really, I'm not having like this is not set in stone. You can go in so many different directions. Like, and they are beautiful in their own way. Like there are at least 10, 15 species in the genus that people barely work with in regards to the breeding, and there's so much potential. Also because they are so rare, like there are a lot of rare species that people haven't been breeding with, and hoping to do something in that regard.
And what genetics do the large flowers come from? Which have the biggest?
Yeah, Candicans,
Oh, that's
um,
the big one.
Camargensis. Camargensis
Mm.
is like a Cinna species, like from Camargo in Argentina.
Yep.
And yeah, there are like Pachanoi has pretty big flowers too. Like Pachanoi, Peruvianus, Chalensis. These are all have very big, interesting flowers, and you never know like which species are like best for passing down a good flower. Like, but so far I haven't seen one that's really bad. Like you can look at all the Scopulicola hybrids; they look great. There are some really nice big flowering Scopulicola hybrids, and same with Peruvianus or Pachanoi. Like this is they just have pretty big flowers in general. It's a good type of plant for breeding.
And so flowers is now your current focus, but what was like your pathway into cactus? What first got you kind of excited about them, and what were you paying attention
I
to initially?
I th- I think my first cactus was like a Echinocactus grosoni and like a Gymnocalcium. I've been just getting into all kinds of cacti in the beginning. Like I like columnar cacti. Had a bunch of the classics like Stetsonia coryne that you like the classic columnar cacti that you buy and badly neglect. And yeah, and it just ended up like in like the genus Trichocereus that was like, I don't know, the 2000s, early 2000s, where just discovered like the SAB forum. And yeah, that was just, they looked amazing. Like aside the overall history and use, they just looked amazing. This is the perfect type of cactus. Like it looks like a cactus. It's not like a tiny little thing that you have to look for, like, and yeah, it just developed naturally over the years. It got more serious and more serious every year, and in the last 7 or 8 years, it has gotten on a level where it's going really well. Like I've had a lot of problems and losses where, like, mostly because of the winter where I live. I had to learn how to deal with the winter, and it was a painful experience for many years.
But you're feeling on top of it now, or you still get the odd surprise?
Last winter, I got lazy and I neglected to put additional padding on the door. Like I have 3 greenhouses now, and one is mostly for like grafting stock. And the grafting stock greenhouse got a little cold. Like when you
It's the
have a
neglected
door.
greenhouse, isn't it? That's the one you neglect.
Yeah, it's like, and unfortunately that one has great plans too. So for this year, I really promised myself that it wouldn't happen again. So I would, this year, once it gets cold, I will pad the whole door frame just to make sure that the doorway area isn't like an entry for the cold, or like where the worms gets out. Like normally you can lose plants even if your heater is perfectly set up, simply because you have cold spots in the greenhouse somewhere. And these cold spots, sometimes they happen. That's the stuff that I had last year, and it really bugged me. And yeah, but overall, I mean, most of the plants survive, and that's good enough for me.
You mentioned like about the history of cactus and how that was like another thing you're interested in. Do you have
Yeah.
any do you have like it sounds like a generic question, but like is there a clone that you love because of its story, or is there a plant that has your favorite story?
I don't think so. There's so many. There are just
Too
so many
many.
plants, and like working with like doing that hybrids book, it was just there's so many, and all are like great in their own ways. Like you can go in so many different directions. Like I love the stuff from the Fields collection, like especially the Validos from the Fields
Yeah.
collection, and I love like what Cactus Country has. They have some incredible hybrids and or plants that they have growing there, like the large Sörensia from like Jolene and Cactus Country. This is the type of stuff that I like right now. Like I wouldn't be able to pick the best one. Really wouldn't be. Like they're all good.
It will be rude. It will be rude to pick one. I
I
like
like when I did the first book, like the and Torsten from SAB did the editing. He helped me a lot. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to make that book. And he like let me know that in at least 10 chapters I wrote that it's one of my most favorite like plants. And then I noticed, okay, I can't do that. I just can't. And I took it out in most of the chapters. It's just like I didn't even notice that I had that in so many.
I don't think it's a problem. I think it's good to have lots of favorites.
It's a
Um,
very like you can go in all kinds of directions. That's the good thing. You pick what you like and just run with it.
Lots of diversity, lots of diversity.
Right.
But I guess on that topic of diversity, like there are some common themes, right? That like are particularly popular. Like it's kind of unique that you're into flowers. Like in the kind of San Pedro community, there aren't that many people that are going deep into flowers. Obviously,
Yep.
everyone loves blue plants, everyone loves mutations, and everyone loves variegation. They're kind of like the common
Mm.
themes. Are there any themes like sorry, any kind of traits that you think are neglected that people could focus more on?
Yeah, I mean, like you have a lot of like naturally blue body plants, and people love them. So that's not something that is overlooked. Like, I don't know, interesting body types. Just generally speaking, like for example, like hybrids with Trichocereus telegonus, like produce some incredible offspring, like with reddish spines. Very interesting type of spination that you don't see from many other species. And that's something that you rarely see. And every time you see it, people love it. Like people are usually amazed when they see a hybrid, like let's say you make a cross between Pachanoi and Telegonus, and the body type that you get is incredible. And it's something that very few people work with. I in the last like 5 years, I started sowing out a lot of Telegonus simply because I've seen the great offspring that it produced. Like that's an overlooked one.
Yeah, cool. I like that. I like that. I've got a nice one, and it always grows like it does that creeping thing, you know, it just wants to crawl around like a snake.
I hate that. I hate that, but that's why you are breeding like it into something else. Like next generation, there's so much potential. If you get like a straight body, you usually have some great spines too.
But you don't like the creeping plants. You're getting away from that.
It's mostly a problem because of the greenhouse. Like when you have a plant that lies like in your greenhouse in
It's not
center,
space
like
efficient.
right 1 square meter. I have a few Hageocereus, like that's a genus that's um pretty interesting for breeding, and these are often like creeping and like prostrate kind of plants, and they take so much space, and you just can't like organize them in a way that is safe. Like they usually lie all on top of each other, and it's just you need so much space, and I don't have that. I wish I had. There are some really nice ones, especially when you have them like in these hanging basket pots and stuff.
Oh yeah, they look
That
cool.
that looks great, but you really need space.
Back to your artificial environment set up for managing the winter. Obviously, you play around with heating. You've got to do that. Do you fiddle
Yep,
much with artificial lighting?
not at all. Absolutely not. I don't want to do anything outside the natural light. I make sure that the trees around the greenhouses are cut back. Like the light situation is always my priority every year, but just the natural light, because we have so much natural light around here, and you don't need so much when you have them at like, I don't know, freezing temperatures. They don't need the light, and it's probably you could probably like have benefits from it, but you also had a lot of energy to pay. Like right
Mm.
now, the heating bill is already like substantial. Like for 3 greenhouses, maybe I don't know, 350 euro, 400 maybe a year, in addition to the like, or in combination with like the sowing out and everything. Like electricity is a factor. I don't think you can, like during the winter it can hurt when you give them additional light, but you would need to do it in a way that like you also need to make sure that there's no drip water like dropping on your lamps and everything. And it isn't easy to do because like there's always drip water in a greenhouse in winter. Like the humidity is just there in the
Mm.
in the air, and you would need to build a very very good like situation with a lamp where it doesn't become unsafe. And like when the greenhouse burns down, it's just a problem too. Like I I very rarely bring lights into the greenhouse, like only if there is an infection that I like on a plant that's so big that I can't move it into the house, then I maybe sometimes bring in a little light, like a little grow light, but nothing else. It's just a problem because of the humidity.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I've been pretty dissatisfied with my experiments with different lights. Sometimes I use like a maybe to kickstart some seeds or something, but yeah, generally I haven't been too happy.
Yeah, look, this is a process. Like I have like an old lamp. It was one of these like red light lamps that you like that the grow lamps were used to build with like 10 years ago or so. And like I recently bought another grow lamp for the seedlings, and the quality has skyrocketed. It's like such a big jump in quality that I suspect that at some point these lamps will be great, but we're not there yet. This is
Hmm.
just the LED market like develops so fast. Every 2 years you need to like there's another generation of lamps. So maybe in 10 years, you can grow them inside for cost efficiently. But right now, I mean, it's just you just need to give them a lot of light, and when you give them a lot of light, you also need to give them a lot of water. You need to fertilize them. Like you're busy all winter or all time you have them inside, and it's just a lot of like you a lot of potential to do wrong. Like there's so many ways you can do wrong. It's easier to do nothing, to just let them do their natural like cooling down period and then start new when spring is on.
Forces you to kind of structure your time, right? Rather than just constantly chasing growth like some kind of insane capitalist.
Yeah, I mean it's my goals are different. I mean, I understand that when you're growing like mass of plants, it can make sense, just to put them under the lamps so they can pop and pop and pop. In such a situation, it makes sense. But when you want to like a natural flowering, like a natural cycle over the whole year with like where you have them like waking up in spring, flowering, then going into dormancy and then going back into spring again. That's just something that is very hard to recreate.
Hmm.
Like I said, it's you not only do you have to create the light situation, but you have to create the temperature right and water and fertilizer. And yeah, and then it's not safe that your plants are beautiful. Like sometimes they just like grow thin anyways.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Australian problem, right? Where we don't have the same kind of seasonal fluctuation, so you get less flowers.
Yeah, like I said, the bigger the plant, the less this is a problem. I'm sure when you have, I would, if I were in such a place in Australia, I'd just plant them out. And at some point, you will have flowers. It's just a matter of time. And when you do it, like when you plant them out, um, like fertilization is a big thing. Like over here, when I started fertilizing the right way in the dosages that they actually recommend, like my flower, I got way for flowers that I have never seen before. Like so fertilization is probably another factor that I would really look into if I were in such a part of Australia, like and wouldn't get a lot of flowers.
And do you have any
And
tips if someone wanted
yeah,
to look into
lots
this?
of water. Lots of water early in spring. Like when my season begins in March, like March 15th is usually the date when I start watering, and I
Is that
almost
is
water
that
them.
the start of spring? Sorry, in Germany.
No, it's not really the start of spring. We still have frost at that time, but it's
Uh-huh.
the start of my personal season.
Okay.
And I usually start watering March 15th, and then they get water like for 2 months straight, at least twice or thrice a week. They get so much water that they just have to go into growth mode and just have to go into flowering mode. Like the water situation is another thing that people often forget. Like you are actually these plants actually have to grow these flowers from something. You can't like produce flowers without providing like the necessary water and nutrients that they need. Like watering early on in the season and until they flower is a good thing. But it doesn't work with like, you need to be careful with like the type of soil that you use. Like if you do it and you have some late frost, you can lose a plant. So you need to be careful. All my plants are in a mineral medium that dries out very fast. So I water them. The mineral medium just like the water just runs through within a day or two, and then I can water again. If you have something that's highly organic, you can get root rot when the soil never really dries out in between. Like when you have a week and you want to water twice a week or so, but the soil is so organic that it doesn't dry. That's a problem. So if you water a lot early in the season during cold time, the soil needs to be right for it. Like you can't do it with everything. A very organic soil can turn badly when it's always wet. And I don't have that problem. Like right now I'm using pumice, that kind of stuff, or I'm sure you know this ceramus type of stuff, this clay, expanded clay stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It works good as an additive. Like it's not a suitable soil alone, but this is the type of stuff that is good if you wanna like water very often. Like it isn't good for storing like nutrients for a very long time. But if you water and fertilize like repeatedly and always when it has dried up, then that's a good soil because it just takes in as much as it needs without like damaging the roots. Like there's some minerals that can be wet, that can store water without damaging the roots, which
Mm-hmm.
for example, pumice, all this like mineral that's like volcanic minerals, they are very good for the root system. Like I have very rarely had problems with actual root rot in pumice.
And what fertilizers do you like to promote flowering?
I use one like that has an NPK value of like, I don't know, 830. Like the K value is pretty important in my opinion. Like I said, it's 30. When I first heard that and compared it to the other fertilizers on the market, I couldn't believe that this works. But like nitrogen is just not as big of a thing for flowering as the other two. Like P and K are pretty important, and both should probably be a little bit higher than the classic fertilizer, and less nitrogen, because if you want to flower more often, you don't want your plants to like grow weak. Like when you use a lot of nitrogen in your fertilizer, you get these very weak and vulnerable plants that like to die from fungal infections and stuff like this. So usually you go with a fertilizer that has a higher P and K value.
Nice, good tip. So you're breeding cactus, right? Working on
Yeah.
this body, big flowers, and the kind of patterns that you like.
Yeah.
And you're also working on 3 books, is that right? One on Trichocereus, one on Cerenzia, and one on Leucostel, or however you say that.
So it's right. I had actually planned to do a big book, like a big Trichocereus book. Like the book started like, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And overall, the situation in this whole, like, there were so many cladistic studies and developments in like the system that I had to adapt. Like I wouldn't be able to do like a book with on just the genus Trichocereus in a way that is scientifically sound, that is like that makes sense. Like when you have right now, the situation is you have Trichocereus sensu stricto with these, like with Pachanoi peruvianus, with these columnar cacti, and most of the other species that were in this genus were moved to Cerenzia. Cerenzia is a genus that has become big Like this is one of the biggest genus of the former Trichocereus plants now. So the biggest part of my books is that genus right now, because most of the other species were moved there. And Leucostele is a genus. I'm not sure if like how the situation is, because this is still developing. But that genus is for the Chilean species, like for Chiloensis and Deserticola, all these Chilean species that that are connected with each other. You can definitely, like when you look at the Chilean species, they are all somehow related. And it's a completely different type of plant that you have like in Peru, like the Peruvian species like Peruvianus and Pachanoi. It's a different type of plant, and you just have to like include it in the way you solve this system. Like, and this isn't a perfect system, like with like putting all these into 3 different genera, but it is actually based on genetic science, on cladistic studies. Like there's someone in Germany who does a lot of work on it, like Boris Schlumpberger
Yeah,
is
he was
his
the one
name.
that did all the Serenity
Right.
stuff, right?
And like most of the stuff that he does is pretty good. Like I'm like I don't understand all of his like work, but I'm working myself into it right now. Like, and it makes sense. Like the only thing that we will need to look into like is size of the seeds, like the seed size of certain species. What I'm doing is I'm trying to like put them under the microscope and maybe include like the pictures from like microscope
Cool.
of every seed of every species. That's something that doesn't 100% work with like Boris's system, but he's on a good way. This is much better than Echinopsis, the way it was before. Like I'm really happy that Trichocereus is back in a way that makes sense, because like you can't, when you look at the history of like this cactus literature and species descriptions, like the difference that you have between like Pachanoi and Echinopsis oxygona, for example, like there are different genera that are made based on on fewer differences than you have between these two. Like you have a completely different body type on Trichocereus Pachanoi than you have on these clumping Echinopsis. And the flowers are very different too. Like this long, slender tube that you have on Echinopsis, and the small flower, that doesn't work with like including them in one genus. It just is too much of a difference, and the genetic situations support it. Like it's not that this is like just like picked at random. The genetics behind it, like the clades in which they are, it just supports it right now. I'm sure there are a lot of species that need work, especially the rarer ones like South Peruvians, Trichocereus schöni, and then Trichocereus santensis, Santa Valley, Trichocereus verdermannianus needs to be looked into, Trichocereus like validus, this kind of stuff. But overall, we're on a good way right now. It has been terrible, like from the 70s until the 2000s, and this could actually work. I'm sure they will have to move around stuff, but overall, I'm pretty happy with the situation. I'm pretty happy that I lived long enough to actually see like cladistic studies that that people 100 years ago hadn't seen. Like, I mean, if you look into old cactus books, they just write all the random stuff they find, and sometimes it's complete nonsense, and sometimes it's right. And we have like the luxury to look at a study and see like how closely certain species are like related, and see who was right in the history of cactus literature.
Yeah. The genetic evidence is making the conversation a lot more interesting.
It's not always it's you cannot 100% like rely on it, but it's another tool, and it is getting more important.
And so besides these 3 books, is there a future that you're imagining of other projects you'd like to work towards, or your plate is full?
I'm not sure right now. I started pushing forward the books like massively right now, and I'm not sure how my health is doing. I realized that like making the first 2 books took a strain on my health. Like it's a lot of stress in addition to the stuff with like Facebook, like all this Facebook drama, all this stuff. It took a negative impact on my health. So I want to finish like these 3 books. These will probably come out at the same time, simply because I
Wow.
want to like create a situation where people don't have to pay the expensive shipping repeatedly.
Yeah, they're heavy
So
books.
right. So I will finish this thing in one, and I will not publish one before the other, probably. I mean, you never say never, but right now the plan is not to like do one book every 2 years. It's do them all at once and finish them when they're ready and work on this like really hard. Last 2 years I had like, I don't know, I had the worst burnout that you can have, like probably from Facebook, probably because of, it was so much on Facebook. And since I decided to pull back a little from the groups and focus on the writing, on the actual writing, and this worked pretty well. And apart from that, I'm working on YouTube. I'm working on social media. Like we have like Instagram and Facebook, the accounts that I have like for the pages, like for Cactus Jerk, have reached like, I don't know, 10 million like reach. And
Yeah, I've seen
it
some of your memes go a little bit viral. It's pretty cool.
I'm mostly like moving away from the memes simply because like there's so much to post, and I want to like since recently everything apart from memes did terribly on Facebook, but now suddenly the flower stuff goes viral every
Mm.
week. And if this continues to work, I will just post my own stuff. And but yeah, a meme every now and then doesn't hurt. Like people just like them more. Facebook just gives them more reach. It's just something. Unfortunately, it's a situation like on Instagram, my account has an incredible reach. Like last month was 5 million, but
Wow.
the cactus stuff doesn't get as much reach as it does on Facebook. It's just the way like they construct their system, their algorithm. They boost certain type of content, and it's unfortunately it's not cactus stuff. it's
Mm.
it's often like, I don't know, it's often viral posts like memes that are shown to many people, like millions of people. And yeah, I try to work my way around it, like find a middle ground somewhere, and
So
it isn't
you
easy.
so you pulled away a bit from Facebook and you put a bit
Yep.
more attention into YouTube. Is
Yes, I did.
how else does your online presence look like in terms of strategically for, growing you and your
Well,
cactus thing?
well, I noticed that like being on Facebook, like especially Facebook groups, it leads like it's great to post as a group. It's great to have a community like that is there, but like it has gotten to a point where there are a million groups, like just the groups about like the genus Trichocereus. I don't know, hundreds. There are hundreds of groups now, and this will turn into many like they will develop into different directions. Like the community will become more like split apart, and it's nothing that like you can capture. This is something that only Facebook like will be successful with. Like Facebook loves having many groups, but the times where you had the community in one place is the times are over. So
Mm.
it makes no sense for me to put like the few time and energy that I have into like nothing but Facebook groups, you know? So I'm like last last month I like paused some groups that I didn't need. Like I had started a lot of cactus groups, a lot that I just don't have the time to entertain. So I will be active in 2, 3, 4 groups, like the big ones, like the Trichocereus group. I will be active in that one simply because it's a huge community, and it does great. Like I don't need to be there, but it is fun to be there. Like it is fun to know that the community lives and that everyone posts great stuff, and I can come there when I'm not feeling well and post something too, you know. But overall, my whole like direction is moving like more towards pages. Like the Cactus Jerk pages have become really big, and overall you have less problems with the moderation. Like when you're doing a lot of groups, Facebook has gotten more and more problematic with scammers. Like it has become unsafe to buy cactus on Facebook, and that's a problem. So moderating a Facebook group is a lot more problematic than moderating a page. Like, or when you have a Facebook group, they will punish you for every little insult that you have on a Facebook group. And that's something like we had problems with the Cactus Growers Worldwide group because of like a cactus meme. And they almost deleted the group. And that was the point where I said, all right, this isn't developing in a way that I want to support. In a way that like when you have admins and moderators that keep these communities alive, that put all their life and energy into these like groups that they built, that they built from nothing, and they are not treated with the respect that they deserve. That was like a big factor for me, where I said, okay, then I will just put my energy into stuff like a Facebook page. Like, I mean, they treat the page owners a little bit better right now. I'm not sure if it will stay like this, but for now it is the way it is. Like people argue on Facebook all the time, but only in groups you can be punished when you are the group admin. Like for arguments between different users, like someone writes a nasty word in your group, and the admin gets punished, and it doesn't take much to get deleted. I've seen like a German cactus group being deleted recently. They didn't even know what they did. Like, I mean, there was probably a reason, probably related to spam, because there's also a big problem with spammers that just post via bots. And yeah, you just have to do so many things right all the time in a group. It's not really something that is as much fun as it used to be.
Yeah, it's a busy place, right? I can't imagine like being in your positions. Yeah, some of these groups that you've started and been involved with just have like an unmanageable amount of people and content. Like it'll be literally impossible for you to keep track of it all.
You need to, like, in the last time they added some tools, firewall tools and stuff, where you can like take better care of who like joins your group. But yeah, it's not easy, and I don't see like especially when you're working in niches, it's not something like that. I don't know. It's just hard to do this for anything other than like building little different communities. And that's a great thing, you know. You have all these different communities, but I kind of miss the time like when you had all people in one place, and you didn't have to go to all kinds of groups just to know what's happening. Sometimes I don't see stuff that's going on that's taking place in other groups, and it's just how it is. But it's not as much fun as it used to be. And I really miss the times when we were on forums, like SAB forum. It's not a positive like development, the way Facebook killed all the forums. It's not like, I was aware of that at the time, like when in the beginning, that it would turn to this. But it's still sad when it happens.
Feels a bit more like junk food, right?
I mean, no, it is a like a you have more censorship. You have, in the past, you had the group admin, the person who ran the forum, decide what kind of discussions you were allowed to have. And now you have like this big network that makes these decisions like for all the people. And it's not always like it's the opposite of freedom of speech. It's like freedom of commercial culture. Like
Hmm.
you have commercial companies deciding what can be discussed, and that's not a healthy way to move forward in a society like that. I mean, I don't think that like censorship is important to a certain degree when you're dealing with radicals, with terrorism. But so like having endless like freedom of speech like is a theory. It doesn't work in practice, because you have terrible people doing terrible things. But a certain degree of freedom of speech is necessary for a healthy like society, you know. Otherwise, you will never have public discussions about stuff that are like suppressed and for wrong reasons.
And even more frustrating where it's like it's not even for a reason, it's just because the word Trichocereus or San Pedro or something is
Exactly.
just it's red flagged. So there's not
It's
even
just
an
it's
opportunity to discuss it.
right. It's just one example, but it happens in all these niches that just touch something that might be perceived as problematic. Like they're always going the safe way. And this is nothing that I criticize. It makes sense, like from a commercial point of view. Like when you run a company and you want to be safe, you want to like just look at like Omegle, like this chat platform, this voice, like this platform that just closed down because it was probably a huge nightmare. Like they had problems all the time with people like with nudity on stream and stuff like this. You know, it's probably easier to set up your network that way, like that you just err on the
It's
safe
easier to be
on the side.
oppressive. It's always easier
Yeah.
to be oppressive.
Right, exactly. Especially since our community these days always loves to say, how could you allow this to happen? Like, and but it goes like you cannot like prepare for everything when you're when social media. You will always have these like stuff that is a problem, like for advertisers and for like the Facebook themselves. There's not never a way to be 100% certain, but the way they set up their system just suppresses so much unproblematic discussion that just gets caught in the fire.
To take it back to the world of plants outside of the internet world of humans, have you been on any cactus field trips, or has it all been remote for
No,
you?
no, I was discussing like the visit to like the field trip, the sacred succulent field trips in 2010. I planned to go with them, like with Ben, and then it's like I started having problems with my health, and it has been since then,
Hmm.
like where I decided I will not do that like for my health, you know,
Hmm.
like the field trips in the last like 10-15 years, where I mostly like checked all their like I was supporting the field trips that Sacred Succulents did. They did some kind of fundraiser where you can like send them money, and they will send you all their photos and all their information and everything and seeds back. So I was supporting like the 2008, 2009, and 2010 field trips that they did. But yeah, unfortunately, it didn't materialize that I could come with them, because especially the 2010 one really hurt not being there, because like that was they found some great stuff there, like some really rare plants and everything. That was a good trip. Like I'm sad that they don't seem to be doing these anymore.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you make it over one day. I hope that, but I also hope we can get you here in Australia too. I just want
Like
to send you all over the world.
now, I mean, like Sacred Succulents, they used to do a lot of field trips in the past, and they have their own issues right now. I think the last 5 years have been problematic for them, and they don't seem to have like the energy to like drive to Bolivia again or something like that, you know.
Mhm.
And that's sad too, because they did some great stuff in the past, like Sacred Succulents. I really
Well,
recommend anyone to check out their like the photos from their field trips, because they are amazing.
there are heaps in your books, right? A lot of images from those.
They allowed me to, yes, they allowed me to show some in the first two, like mostly in the first, and the second one I have like a few clones that they had. But yeah, for the new one, I haven't been like having a lot of contact with Ben simply because he's been having a hard time, and I didn't want to keep bothering him about like photos and stuff. But yeah, I have a lot of photos from them. I'm very thankful. I'm still including like their flyers to the books that I'm sending out, which we agreed on in the past. Yeah, I hope they can pull around, because from what I've seen in the last years, they're not like doing good.
Oh,
They're
no.
having a hard time too. Like, situation isn't easy right now.
That sucks. That sucks. But to continue focusing on cactus habitat, even if you haven't been there, maybe you've learned something that you could share with me. But I hear kind of conflicting things around San Pedro being threatened in habitat. I know at like a species level, they seem to be relatively safe.
They're
But
they're not threatened. They're not threatened. They are like threatened in the way that people hack them down every year.
yeah, yeah,
Like, they're threatened in the way that they will not expand further because people pick the seeds. Like, people take them down and keep them. Like, they're a lot of the seeds do not end up like in the nearby area, which is a problem, in itself. But these are so common plants for the natives that this is not a concern for them. And yeah, but they are not threatened. A lot of cacti are threatened also in Peru. Like I said, Hageocereus, like these are very, like, they're relatively close to Trichocereus. They are threatened almost everywhere. Like, every site, especially since this is a genus where you have like little species that only exist in one place and nowhere else, and they keep vanishing in an alarming speed. Probably also because of landscaping. Like, they are full of trash. People just build stuff on top of that. But yeah, like, I wouldn't worry about like Pachanoi or Peruvianus, just because they are so common, because people like to have them close. Like, but you constantly see big plants being cut back, constantly. Like that large plant in Chavin.
yeah. I saw those
Chavin.
photos recently. Yeah.
Every 2 years you see a new one where they have cut it back, and it's just sad because this was such an impressive plant. This was
Huge.
huge. And yeah, it's not directly threatening, but at some point, like maybe in 100 years, you will lose some of these plants because they no longer like spread the seeds in the nearby area, like 100 meters around it. And yeah, at some point they will become less and less unless they do something. I mean, right now there's a lot of progress made, like especially with like poaching and in habitat and stuff like this. And I suspect this is a thing that will be solved in the future. But for many cacti, especially the rarer ones, it will be too late. Like Hageocereus, I'm sure some of them will become extinct in the next 30, 40 years. And the same problem exists with Lophophora. You have a few very unique populations that we will lose. Like, I'm sure at some point they can be reintroduced, like from like nursery grown specimens, but the original wild populations of many plants will be lost. It's mostly due to landscaping. It's not. I mean, you have a huge problem with poaching on Lophophora, but from this, aside from this, and maybe Ariocarpus and these classic species, most of the other cacti are like become extinct because they are not valued. Like, seen some photos full of trash and it breaks my heart.
Yeah, it's sad, right?
Yeah.
I kind of like a thought experiment I like to kick around because there's the debate over what to do around threatened peyote, and it's like people saying that they shouldn't be replanting efforts, like we shouldn't interfere
Yeah,
with the original
I mean,
population?
what else can they do? Like, I mean, what's the alternative? If
Hmm.
the alternative is that the plant just becomes extinct, then it's not an alternative. Because you have like these populations, like when you make sure you pick the right specimen to reintroduce, and you make sure that they survive for like 100 years, then you can get this thing going again. I mean, um, you need to do a lot more for protection in habitat. Like it's the same with all these amazing animals that get lost, that get slaughtered, like elephants and everything. You need to treat poachers like with the harshest penalties that you have. And unless that happens, nothing will change. Nothing will change. You can reintroduce them, but you need to like guard these populations. You need to make sure they are not picked up again like 2 years later. And I don't think it makes sense unless you have a plan to keep them alive long term.
Besides conserving plants so that they don't go extinct, do you have any other kind of general hopes and dreams for cactus culture in how you might hope it will develop?
Not really. I mean, I'm sure that like the means of growing plants efficiently will become better and better. Sorry. The light situation will be better. We will have better lights, better lamps, better grow lamps. And yeah, I'm sure the installation methods will become better so that you can grow certain plants in parts of the world where you couldn't before. Or like right now, we are faced with like a different type of climate that we have here. Like we used to have really cold winter experiences here. Like we had -20, -25 Celsius winters here. We haven't had that in like 10 or 15 years. Like the last -25 winter that I had was when I lost a collection. Like when I lost actual collection in a greenhouse. And we haven't had that. So the climate is changing here. So maybe it will not completely be bad. Like, I mean, it will be bad for the world,
But it
but
might be good for cactus.
but I might be able to like have a few cacti in my garden while the whole world like is cooked, but that's a bleak outcome, like I
I
wouldn't
like
I
that. I
wouldn't
like
list it
that.
as a positive.
It's kind of poetic, right? It's nice to see a silver lining to all of this absolute chaos.
Yeah, I mean, my whole life I was fighting against the cold. Like I was when I like started going into cacti, I was really poor. I was like coming from a really poor situation, and I couldn't afford to heat the house.
Hmm.
Not even talking about heating the greenhouse. So surviving the winter was always a big concern for me. Major. Like heating my house. I have an old house. My grandfather built this house
Well,
right right when he came out of like World War II, like from POW.
hmm.
And this house is built with bunker cement and steel. They
Huh.
just picked this stuff up from nature, like not from nature, from the stuff that were left from the bomb buildings that were left, and build houses with it. And it's not like insulated it's not insulated in a good way. So the cold was always a problem here, but in the last years it's getting warmer and warmer. Like the last 10 years, winter is still winter still sucks here, but at least I was able to keep my plants like not only happy, like not only keep them like alive, but make them flower. And that's something that took me a very long time. Like I hate the winter. Winter is something that I will never get used to. Like if I ever have the means, I will move away. Like I have no deep connection to the winter. Like people standing in the snow and being happy. Screw that. That sucks.
A true cactus man.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a throwback to when we were talking about breeding and maybe it's less interesting to you because I imagine you were very you treasure your seed because you're working on your hybrid so closely. But Have you had any particularly interesting cactus fruits to eat? Have you ever had
No,
anything that
no,
no?
no. I would not eat them. It's just too much work. It's just too much work to get a fruit. Like you can sometimes like buy them in a supermarket or something like that. That's something that I would try, but I'm not eating my fruit. It's just too much work. Regardless which cross I make, it's a good one, and I want to see it. Like I wouldn't
Fair
eat it.
enough. Fair enough. It's like, eating 100 plants all at once, I guess, if you count the seeds.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much potential in just one fruit. Like you have so many different, like every flower can look different, you know. Yeah.
What about
I
any
just don't see
other?
them. I just don't see them like as a source of fruit. It's just
Fair
not there
enough.
in my head.
Well, if you come over to Australia and see some of these huge plantations, maybe we'll be able to change your mind.
I started sowing out some Cactus, like they have some pretty big fruit.
Oh yeah.
That's something that I started recently, like like Hylocereus, like plants that have bigger fruits.
Hmm.
And maybe I will try it in a few years. That's why was sowing them out. I thought maybe I will try it one day. I probably won't, but if I do, I will let you know.
Cool, cool. I guess it's tough with limited space, right? It's
Yeah,
you
I
got to
just
have
don't
some
have the like.
priorities.
I look at the flowers, and if the flower isn't like suitable to make crosses with the stuff that I work with, I just don't have the space for it most of the time. Unfortunately, because you cannot make like the crosses that nobody sees coming. You know, sometimes you make a cross you didn't even know that was possible. And that's something you can only do that when you have the luxury of space. And I
Yeah,
don't have that.
sure, sure. What along that same line of thinking, any other interesting or novel applications of cactus that you've heard of, like, spine fish hooks or anything like that?
I'm not really if I don't know. I mean, I you always see the stuff with leather and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure cacti will be big like in the food industry at some point. Can't tell you which ones, but I'm sure people will run out of stuff to eat and eventually end up with cacti, and it will be like it could be a big thing like when you are having like back when they suddenly started all drinking like vitamin water and stuff like this. So but it's nothing like where you can predict what exactly will be a big thing. Like I mean people are doing leather stuff like this, which could really work at some point. I mean it doesn't matter if you do like this like faux leather, like false leather or cactus leather. If you can use it the same way and you don't have to like kill like animals for it, that's great. So I would sure support that. Like if every 2 years or so you see like some startup making the headlines with cactus leather and stuff
Yeah,
like
I've
this.
seen
It's
this,
just
but I've never tried it. I've never actually felt some.
me neither. But I definitely think it could like be a thing at some point, like in some way. You never know what kind of product this will be used in. Like you see something, they make it for like I don't know, like handbags, and eventually it will become a thing in something completely different. Hard to
I
predict that.
I love the idea of having a San Pedro jacket. That would be pretty cool. I've almost got through my list of questions, but I've got two more.
Yeah.
And they're both. Firstly, are there any common taxonomic errors that you kind of like people to improve on, or maybe they're just a pet peeve? Because I know you're a taxonomy guy.
Well, I'm already glad when I don't make any. Like I have a few I have a few things on my list that I want to correct from my first books. Like I don't really walk around and correct people. I just think it's rude.
Well, what are the
Like
errors you
people
want to correct? Tell me.
for example, I have a photo that Rodney took, and I wrote another name below it, like stuff like this,
Oh, okay,
smaller
okay.
stuff. But it bothered me at the time. When you make a book, the book that we made was planned as an ebook. It was not planned as like a printed book, and the fact that this was printed was a miracle. Like it was all thanks to Torsten. Like Torsten Wiedemann, I want to say it again. He told me, why don't you try like crowdfunding? And I said, leave me alone with that. And eventually I was open to it. I saw the error in my ways and tried it, and it was so successful we could print it. And then you have like so many things that you can't verify, like because like stuff like when you have clones and hybrids. If you look at like the clones and hybrids book, none of these clones have been treated the way they are supposed to be treated. Like normally you would write a description for a hybrid that you publish, like they are published in the same way you publish a botanical species. And that is because people need to be able to look it up to say, okay, this man has described this plant, and this is the name, and this is this, and and then you have like clones that are called like chemical shaman's dick, yeah, where you like there's nothing but a name, and I love that clone. I say that with all the love.
We all do.
I love
We all
that
do.
clone. It's one of the best. It's one of the best, but it's just a problematic subject as a whole. Like I never made a book that was so difficult to make than the second book, than the hybrids book, simply because you cannot win. There are no descriptions that you can go to and say, okay, this clone came from this person. You need to ask all kinds of people. And then you have these like people that want to take credit for someone else's plant. We had that. We had that happen. And it still bothers me. I'm so angry because people make it look like, yeah, you wrote that this guy has found this plant, and it was actually someone else. And these were situations where someone came to me, complained, and said, "Hey man, that's my clone. I distributed that, and it wasn't true." Like, and you cannot verify it. With botanical species, you have a whole list of descriptions of stuff you can look up and can actually see what was written, when it was written. You can compare it. You can't do that with hybrids. I would never do a hybrids book again. It was my gift to the it was my gift to the community. It really was. I wanted to do something good, and I still sometimes get slaughtered for it because stuff where people try to take credit for it, like the lumberjack clone. Good that with like it came from San Francisco. I need to look up the name, but it didn't come from the person who claimed it came from, and that really pissed me off. Like I was really, really angry about that, because why would you claim a clone that doesn't come from you? But this isn't a way of thinking that you can do when you're doing a book, and that's why I would never do a hybrids book again. It was a fun experience, and it's a super beautiful book. I wish we could have done 500 pages, because there were so many others that I would have included, but it is so difficult as a writer. You have so much problems that come that you can't predict, and in the future I will only do botanical stuff. Like, I don't know, this is just these, like, when you have a printed book, you can never go back and like correct it the way it is right now. Like, you can do a second edition, and for now I'm not sure we're doing a second edition, like simply because it's so much like work and money that's involved there. Like the second book, we barely made it. We only made it like because of the community that we have, and because of friends like that supported the project, and like it is really hard to make these books these days. So you need to go a little bit away from the niche market, and I think it will stay like one of the few printed books for a while, until printing gets more affordable. Like about the hybrid subject, simply because like you can't sell so many books. Like the first book, we had immense amount of people who wanted to have it, and a hybrids book, it's just not as much like on the mainstream like point of view. People just don't care for hybrids as much. It's unfortunate, but for a printed book, you need to be able to pay for the printing. And if would I have to make that decision again, I would think it will probably be difficult, like especially with the crowdfunding. We spoke about crowdfunding stuff. Like we could have sold more of the second of the hybrids book in the crowdfunding, but at some point they just weren't taking any orders anymore. Like the Indiegogo,
Uh-huh.
they worked with like credit card companies and everything, and they didn't like the title.
Yeah, right. And that's so it was San Pedro hybrids. What's it called now?
It's just Trichocereus Volume 2, and then
Yeah,
I have the subtitle with like about hybrids, cultivars, and stuff like this. And it isn't bad simply because the whole book developed into other direction. Like we included a lot of hybrids that weren't really supposed to be in the book, like because it's a different species. They are similar in the way that like they come from the same genus, just different species, you know. So we used a wider definition of this whole group of plants. So just we can show what's actually out there. Like we didn't want to like only include hybrids with Pachanoi. It would have been like a less interesting book.
Oh,
But
well,
yeah,
I'm glad you.
the name change was really necessary, unfortunately.
I'm glad you suffered through it. I think it's my favorite one. Just, but maybe your frustration around it makes me like it even more.
If that hadn't happened, we would have a Lophophora book by now. But it's
Yeah,
the same problem. I'm seeing the same problem with Lophophora, and I'm not running into that knife again. Like when we have a publisher that wants to publish it, where we have been we were in talks with like big like booksellers and nurseries who want a certain amount of books that would want to pre-order it. So if we ever can like take like pay the printing costs without crowdfunding, then we will maybe do the Lophophora book. But it was just the same problem with a different type of cactus. It's just
yeah. You run into a problem with all the payment stuff getting
exactly
banned because of the word.
you have Stripe and everything. You need to be able to like it doesn't you can't put like I put 2 years of my life into a book, and if I cannot sell it, if I cannot like at least get the printing costs back or everything, it makes no sense.
You can't
You,
even call the book the title of the plant.
exactly, and that's a
Madness.
problem. Like, and these are botanical books. Nothing in my books is problematic. Nothing. It's all botanical books, and that's one of the main things that I think go wrong right now. And maybe it will change, maybe not. Like I said, I could not have predicted the situation in the United States, and maybe this will change too. I just hope,
Me
because
too.
right now we're missing out on many great niche books that aren't written because people can't market them.
Yeah, it's a pity. Many great things we're missing out on, not just books.
A lot of people have been asking me about the Lophophora book. I stopped putting in the flyers because right now I want the situation settled with a publisher that takes in the distribution, because I will not be doing the distribution. It's just um like tragedy waiting to happen. It will happen one way or the other. And unfortunately, yeah, I did not expect that this would be a problem with books, but here we are.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like some ancient problem, right? Like, what year is this? We can't
Yeah,
publish books
it's
about plants.
nothing ever changes. It's just we're like, look at the United States. They're back in the in the 60s and the 70s. It's just it goes like it's all a big circle. We're just here in maybe in 30 years there will be a time when it will be easier to publish the stuff, and then you will have like maybe a time where these problems come up again. It's just I think it's in our nature. It's just as long as we live, some people will think they have the right to tell you what you are allowed to write, what you are allowed to publish, what you are allowed to read. It's just we aren't that bright.
While I've got you, and to take it back to the garden briefly, it's a pretty generic question, but are there any kind of typical or not typical, but any tricks or tips that you apply in your garden that you think, you know, you might have discovered through your own practice that you think other people could benefit from, people that are, you know, growing their own cactus, and any easy
I don't have a
things?
garden. I don't
Oh,
have a garden. I have a jungle that is completely out of control that I need to cut back regularly. I'm glad for everything that doesn't overgrow my house. So I'm right now, my whole garden isn't that big. I have many plants that are planted out, like we have like chestnuts that were planted out, and like large oak trees and stuff like this, a cherry tree. But I'm not gardening in the classical sense because we're right in the middle of like the German jungle, and you have the wilderness. You need to cut it back every year. It's so much work, and it's just like I barely have the time to keep the greenhouses free. Like it's just a very big like part of land that we have here, and it's not that you can like do much with it. So I just allow the plants to grow. Like we have a lot of bees here. We have a lot of like rare bee species, rare insects. Everything is full of like blackberries and stuff that bees and insects love. But it's not a garden in the classic sense. It's just land that we allow to grow naturally. You could call that permaculture, if you, but it's like, you know, it's just we're not doing much in the garden aside from the cacti. It's already so much work. I I I wanted to get started, but I would need another greenhouse. And if I get another greenhouse, I'm sure I would put cacti in it.
yeah, I'm sure. Well, how about rather than gardening, but in terms of cactus growing, have you got any like novel tricks that you think other people could learn from, like simple kind of quirky things?
Well, most people like don't water enough. Like one of my main sticking points in the past was when, like, especially when growing seedlings, I was starving my seedlings because you keep reading that cacti don't need a lot of water, but young cacti seedlings need a lot of water. They need a lot of water. They need a lot of like the best sowing out. I did with organic soil, like with sowing soil. Classic. Who thought that classic sowing soil would be best for sowing, right? But it really is. Like I experimented with everything last 20 years. Sowing soil is still the best. And don't reinvent the wheel. Like small seedlings need a lot of water and take care of the heat. Like in the past, I never had an eye on the heat. Like when you have a greenhouse and you don't put up, I always open the windows, open the doors during the summer because the temperatures can go be like above 30 very fast. And this is stuff that you don't have on your radar. You just see a dead plant and think, yeah, it must be a fungal infection. But actually that plant like died from the heat, and the fungus just jumped on top of the decaying plant, you know. That's the type of stuff that really helped me, like keeping an eye on the environment, on the temperature, on the light, and on the water. Like you wouldn't believe, like most people wouldn't believe how much water small cactus seedlings can take. Like you see them in like enclosed containers with moss and shit, and people like and they survive. Not only survive, they make it. Like probably make it like more often than not.
Yeah.
That's something that last 10 years I learned more. Like I learned more to grow with the climate that I have. I have an eye on the temperature outside, especially during winter. Like every evening I check the temperatures outside, the humidity. When you have a high humidity, you need to open the doors and the windows. That's something that will come naturally after, like, I don't know. For me, it took a while, like 20 years. Then you will realize, okay, maybe it has an effect when I open the window. But you know, this is stuff that you need to see all the things that go wrong before you know how to avoid it for yourself. It's one thing to read it. It's one thing to read a book and say, yeah, that guy writes about opening the windows. That's totally unnecessary until you realize it's totally necessary. You know, it's just you need to make these mistakes yourself and learned a lot in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Patrick. That's
Great.
that's all my questions. But for people that are watching or listening and want to support you and encourage you to destroy yourself writing a million books, how can they encourage you to continue on this strange path?
Well, just subscribe to my newsletter at trichocereus.net, because it's like, when I'm ready, I don't want to start with the promo too early, because you will end up having people asking you about the book all few months, and I want to avoid that. But I will send out newsletters when the new books are ready. Right now, I'm working on it every day. These books are coming, and in the next 2 or 3 months, we're doing like trying to do some basic like promo covers that we can like actually start doing some early promo with an actual cover. I want to do the covers early this time, because last time it was a problem, because no matter how I sent them to the printer, they were always wrong. So I'm trying to do them early this time. So yeah, newsletters will be sent out, and on social media, I will have to be all over social media with this. So it will probably not be possible to overlook it. And at some point, we will say, okay, we're taking orders now. And at that point, we need to make like the necessary funds to pay for the printing. And everyone who orders, then that would be great, like, because otherwise we can't print them. So it's possible we will only do like pre-order, maybe, like, I don't know, maybe we're doing a smaller edition. Normally last books were printed like 1,000 books. Maybe we can only print 500. So once we're saying we're taking pre-orders, let me know, send me an email or wherever. I'm all over social media, and I will make a list of all the people who want them, and then I'm sending out invoices, pay the printing, and then 2 months later we will get our books. Like, and I will not take money before the books are done. That's something that I learned from crowdfunding. Like, crowdfunding was a valuable experience in managing like people waiting for their books. It just takes a while when you have no publisher behind you. You need to do everything yourself. You need to arrange for, like, they come with container and stuff. It takes months, and that's why I will only start taking orders like when we're ready, when we're really ready. And at that point, don't hold back. Let me know, pre-order, because it might be the only way that we're giving them out. I don't know. I wouldn't like that, because like it would be sad if like we're doing a pre-order and it's sold out right away. But I can't tell how many people will order them. So we're hoping that it will work without crowdfunding this time. I'm done with the classic crowdfunding services, because I don't want to have like a book being held hostage over my head, like that I worked 2 years on. When
The same
I make a
problem with
book,
eBay and everything, right? With the
exactly.
crowdfunding platforms.
This is 2 or 3 good years of my life. I put in a lot of work in my books, and I want to see them printed. When they're written, they will come out. And yeah, I will not like I don't want to risk it like by working on a platform that just doesn't have the understanding like to deal with this. So pre-order this time, and I am pretty sure we can print them. Like, they're like, I have a really big newsletter right now, and it would be like, if we can't print them, nobody can. Like, I mean, we have all the tools in the hand to make these books. It's just the question is just like, I don't know, how many can we print? Like, can we print like a tiny edition, or can we maybe print 1,000 books, which would be great.
Yeah.
Because you need 1,000 books to just have it available for a while. I mean, these books take a good 3 years, and when you would need to go back to printing right away if you like do it with pre-order in a small edition. So, but it's the last plan if everything fails.
And do you still have a Patreon?
I have a Patreon. My Patreon is patreon.com/cactusjerk. I also made like a OnlyFans as a joke. That's we will post about that on April 1st. It's like it's a surprise for April 1st. But yeah, I'm just posting flowers on OnlyFans right now. And
Awesome.
I don't have any supporters. I just post flowers like once a month.
I want to join your OnlyFans.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's like, yeah. And I mean, OnlyFans, Patreon, like in this niche, you don't like survive well with it, but sometimes it pays like bills, like the server bill, stuff like this. I'm happy about, like, I have a few like loyal supporters on Patreon. And yeah, I need to do more on that platform. It's just so much content you need to put everywhere. Like, no matter where you put your content, you forget something. Like on YouTube, I filmed like 3 seasons of videos. I have at least 1,000 videos that I filmed for YouTube, and you just can't upload more than, like, I don't know, 10 a week. People will see nothing but Cactus and tell you, man, slow down, please. Don't post as much. I want to see other stuff. So you need to, like, it all takes too much time when you're doing it the way like I'm doing it, which is without like a publisher or people that do marketing for you. It's just something what I can like say, support the small content creators, like the actual content creators, not like the people on Instagram that like post a photo of them like sitting on a car, but actual content creators, because most of them don't like survive very well. Like some of the authors that I personally love, I think I'm their only supporter on Patreon. Like small content stuff that is niche related, that the mass market just doesn't care about. Support these people, and that already goes a long way.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're doing it, even though it's a bit of a hard road. Yeah, really grateful for all of your work, and thanks for talking to me. It's yeah, really interesting and cool.
It has been great. Thank you for having me. Like yeah, it took a while, so sorry again because it took so long to set it up. I'm just not like I don't do many interviews. I used to do them like I used to do interviews like in my job, like in the past, and I hated it.
Well, I hope this was
I
better.
hated doing it. It's not fun, like setting up an interview, so it's a lot of work. So I appreciate all the work you put into this. All right, here are my top 5 tips. Actually water them because they need a lot of water. Give them nutrients, a good fertilizer. Most people do not fertilize enough. Then keep them out of the sun when they're small and put them right into full sun when they're bigger. Give them lots of oxygen and keep an eye on the temperatures. Temperature is a big thing people like to forget.
Hey, thanks for joining us on today's EGA webcast, back in it for 2024. Make sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the newsletter at the EGA website as well. While you're there, check out some of the resources that are available for you to download, print off, use in whatever way you see fit, and stay connected with community, stay connected out there. We are going to have some more opportunities to connect with you outside of this digital realm pretty soon, I think. And I'm really looking forward to it. Can't tell you much more yet. That's why you need to sign up for the EGA newsletter. It's the source of all the information. Thanks to our guests today, Dr. Patrick Noll. And thank you to Dr. Liam Engel for all of his work getting this organised and carrying out the interview as well. If you Google around Dr. Liam Engel's name, you'll find that he also has a podcast that you might like to check out and subscribe to on whatever platform you use for that sort of thing. And good luck to you as you continue now on your digital journey after this YouTube video finishes.